The stars twinkled peacefully in the black sky above Earth. For centuries, humans had looked up at those stars and wondered if they were alone. Today, they got their answer. Captain Susan Mitchell yawned as she watched her monitors on Space Station Delta. The orbital defense platform circled Earth silently, one of 12 such stations built after the nations of Earth finally united their space programs. Her night shift was almost over, and nothing exciting ever happened here anyway. The alert sound made her jump. Susan spilled her coffee as she turned to the main screen. Something was coming into the solar system, something big. Computer confirm. Reading, she said, her heart beating faster. Multiple objects detected entering solar system beyond Neptune's orbit. Objects appear artificial in nature. Susan's fingers flew across the control panel. Magnify Sector 7. The screen zoomed in and Susan's breath caught in her throat. Ships. Massive ships unlike anything humans had built. Their dark hulls reflected no light, but their shapes were clear against the stars. She counted 5, then 10, then 20. Too many. This is Captain Mitchell on Delta Station, she said into her communicator. Code Phoenix, I repeat, Code Phoenix. This is not a drill. Within minutes, command centers worldwide lit up with activity. In Washington, General John Rivera was pulled from a dinner party. In Beijing, Admiral Ling was woken from sleep. In Moscow, Colonel Petrov canceled his vacation. Code Phoenix meant only one thing: first contact with alien life. But no one had expected first contact to look like an invasion fleet. Dr. Alan Russell was eating a sandwich in his small office at NASA when they called him. As Earth's leading expert on possible alien life, he had spent decades preparing for this moment. But as the Pentagon helicopter lifted him toward the emergency meeting, he felt cold fear in his stomach. The photos they showed him didn't look like peaceful visitors. President. Diane Bennett sat at the head of the table in the underground command center. Leaders from every major nation were connected by secure video. For once, there were no arguments between countries. The threat facing them was too big for old conflicts. Dr. Russell, what are we looking at? The president asked. Alan stood, his hands shaking slightly as he pointed to the images. 27 ships, each roughly 3 kilometers long. Their technology is far beyond ours. They appear to be in attack formation. Have they made contact? Asked the Russian president. Not yet, General Rivera said. But they're advancing toward Earth at a steady pace. They'll reach lunar orbit in approximately 70 hours. The Chinese premier spoke next. Can we fight them? The room fell silent. Earth had weapons in space, missiles, lasers, even a few experimental plasma cannons. But nothing that could match what they were seeing on the screens. We should try to communicate first, Dr. Russell suggested. They may not have hostile intentions. No one looked convinced, but they agreed. Earth's most powerful transmitters sent messages of peace and welcome in every known human language, plus mathematical sequences that any advanced civilization should understand. For 12 hours, there was no response. The alien fleet continued its approach, silent and seemingly unstoppable. Then, on every communications device on Earth, from military channels to civilian phones, a message appeared. The translation computers worked quickly to decode it. The message was simple. Attention inhabitants of Sol 3. You are now within territory claimed by the Galactic Imperium. Your planet has resources we require. Surrender your world and accept Imperium rule, or face elimination. You have 72 hours to comply. In homes across Earth, people gathered around screens as their leaders addressed them. President Bennett spoke calmly, but her eyes showed her concern. My fellow citizens of Earth, today we face the greatest challenge in human history. An alien force has entered our solar system and demanded our surrender. I want to assure you that the united governments of Earth are working together to address this threat. We ask for calm and cooperation during this crisis. What she didn't say was that Earth's military leaders saw no way to win against such advanced technology. In a secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, the World Defense Council gathered. Military commanders, scientists, and world leaders all faced the same impossible choice: surrender or be destroyed. We need more time, said Admiral Ling. Our lunar bases have been working on new shield technology. It's not ready yet, but with a few more days. We don't have a few more days, General Rivera replied. We have 3 days and then they start firing. Dr. Russell studied the alien message again. Something doesn't add up. If they're so powerful, why give us time at all? Why not just attack? Standard conquest protocol, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Dr. Eve Daniels enter the room. She walked with a limp, her white hair tied back tightly. Few people knew that Dr. Daniels had spent 40 years studying a small piece of alien technology found in the desert decades ago. What do you mean? President Bennett asked. They've done this before, Eve explained. They arrive, threaten, demonstrate power, and expect surrender. It's efficient. No need to waste resources fighting if fear alone will make us give up. So what do we do? Asked the British Prime Minister on the video screen. Eve's eyes narrowed. We show them humans don't scare easily. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared. On the main screen, they watched as one of the alien ships fired a beam of intense light. The beam struck Neptune's smallest moon, Naiad. In an instant, the moon exploded into dust. That was their demonstration, Eve said calmly while others stared in horror. Now they expect us to beg for mercy. President Bennett stood up straighter. Then they don't know humans very well, do they? General Rivera, Admiral Ling, I want every weapon we have ready to deploy. Dr. Russell, Dr. Daniels, find me a weakness in their technology. She turned to face the assembled leaders of Earth. We have 72 hours to prepare. The Imperium thinks we'll surrender. Let's show them how wrong they are. As Susan Mitchell watched from Space Station Delta, she saw something unprecedented. Ships from every nation on Earth moving into defensive positions. Russian cosmonauts worked alongside American astronauts. Chinese space stations coordinated with European satellites. For the first time in history, humanity stood truly united. The Empire had threatened Earth. Now humanity would respond. The clock was ticking. 60 hours remained until the Imperium's deadline. In orbit around Earth, Captain Susan Mitchell watched as civilian space stations were evacuated. Only military personnel remained in space now. From her position on Delta Station, she could see the Earth's new defense fleet gathering. It looked impressive until she glanced at the alien ships approaching from beyond the moon. Their massive dark shapes made Earth's best spacecraft look like toys. Captain, we've received new orders, her second-in-command said. We're to assist with deployment of the satellite network. Susan nodded. For the past 24 hours, every launch facility on Earth had been sending up small satellites. Alone, they seemed useless against the Imperium threat. But Susan had heard rumors of a plan. Meanwhile, in the underground command center, Dr. Alan Russell worked without sleep. His eyes were red as he studied the data from the alien ships. There's something here, he muttered as Dr. Eve Daniels limped over to his workstation. Their shield technology. It pulses at regular intervals. Eve leaned closer to the screen. Every 7.3 seconds, she said quietly. Just like the fragment I've been studying for decades. General John Rivera entered the room, his uniform wrinkled. From the long hours. Please tell me you found something we can use, he said. Eve turned to him with a glimmer of hope in her tired eyes. We might have. Their shield technology appears similar to experimental systems we developed from the Arizona crash site. How similar? The general asked. Similar enough that we might be able to disrupt it, Alan explained. But we'd need to get close, much closer than their weapons would allow. The general frowned. So it's useless. Not necessarily, Eve said. What if we could get them to lower their guard, even for a few seconds? In another part of the facility, President Diane Bennett sat with Ambassador Peter Lee, Earth's most skilled diplomat. They were rehearsing a very different kind of approach. I need to sound scared but not broken, the president explained. Willing to negotiate but not quite ready to surrender. Ambassador Lee nodded. The goal is to buy time, but these aliens won't be easy to fool. They've likely done this many times before. Then we'll give them what they expect, the president said firmly. a frightened species considering surrender, while we prepare our surprise. Aboard the Imperium flagship, Admiral Krell watched the blue planet with cold eyes. This was his 43rd conquest, and it always followed the same pattern. First came shock at the Imperium's arrival, then terror after the demonstration of power, then surrender. "Admiral," his communications officer called, "we're receiving a message from the planet." "Display it," Krell ordered. The image of Ambassador Lee appeared on the screen. The human looked appropriately nervous. "Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Imperium. I am Ambassador Peter Lee speaking on behalf of Earth's United Council. We wish to discuss the terms of your proposal. Our leaders need more time to consult with all nations of our world. We request an extension of 24 hours to prepare our response." Admiral Krell smiled slightly. They always asked for more time. It was part of the process. The desperate hope that some solution would present itself. "Tell them they have an additional 12 hours, he told his communications officer. "No more." The officer looked surprised. "Only 12, Admiral? We typically grant the full request to appear generous." "I sense something different about these humans," Krell replied. "Their space defenses are mobilizing too efficiently for a species facing first contact. Grant them 12 hours, but increase our scanner strength. I want to know what they're doing with those small satellites they're deploying." Back on Earth, Dr. Eve Daniels stood before the World Defense Council with a plan. Her white hair was pulled back, and despite her age and limp, she stood tall. "The pulse disruptor works on the same principle as their shields," she explained. "We've been developing this technology in secret for 50 years, since we found that crashed scout ship in Arizona." "But you said we'd need to get too close," General Rivera reminded her. "Yes, for a direct attack," Eve agreed. "But what if we don't attack their ships directly? What if we attack the space around them?" She pulled up a diagram showing the Imperium fleet and Earth. "Their shields work by creating a bubble of distorted spacetime. If we can create a counter-distortion at just the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt all their shields at once, but only for about 3 seconds. 3 seconds isn't long enough to launch an effective attack," Admiral Ling said through the video conference. "It's not meant to be an attack," Eve replied. "It's meant to be a warning shot, a demonstration that we can neutralize their greatest defense. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to scare them enough to reconsider." President Bennett studied the plan carefully. "And these satellites you're deploying will create this counter-distortion?" "Yes, Madam President. We need 240 satellites positioned precisely. Captain Mitchell is coordinating their placement as we speak." The President looked around the room at Earth's leaders. "This plan risks everything on a single demonstration. If it fails, we have nothing left." "With respect, Madam President," Eve said quietly. "If it fails, we never had a chance to begin with." After a moment of silence, the President nodded. "Proceed with Operation Pulse." In space, Susan Mitchell worked tirelessly with her team. Each satellite had to be positioned with perfect precision, forming a giant net around where the Imperium fleet would be in exactly 10 hours. One mistake would ruin everything. "Captain, the Imperium ships are scanning our deployment pattern," her sensor officer reported. Susan felt a chill. "Adjust satellite paths to look like defensive positioning. Make them think we're just setting up a basic shield network." As Earth prepared its surprise, Admiral Krell grew increasingly suspicious. His science officer, Vex, studied the data from their scans. "These humans are deploying a primitive defense grid," Vex reported. "Nothing that could withstand even one of our warships." "Then why do it at all?" Krell wondered. "Order the fleet to advance to position Alpha. I want to be in firing range the moment their extended deadline expires." On Earth, people huddled in shelters or with their families. Many prayed. Others simply waited. News screens showed the approaching Imperium fleet, now clearly visible even to ordinary telescopes. Humanity faced its greatest test united but terrified. In the command center, the final hours ticked away. Dr. Russell and Dr. Daniels made last-minute calculations. General Rivera prepared Earth's conventional weapons as a backup plan, and President Bennett recorded what might be her final address to the people of Earth. "My fellow humans," she said with calm dignity, "today we stand together as one people. Whatever happens in the coming hours, know that humanity faced this challenge with courage and unity. We will not surrender our home without showing the stars what humans are made of." As she finished speaking, alarms sounded. The Imperium fleet had entered lunar orbit ahead of schedule. Earth's moment of truth had arrived sooner than expected. "They're testing us," Eve whispered. "They want to see if we'll panic." President Bennett stood tall. "Then let's show them we won't. Launch Operation Pulse now." The command center fell silent as the satellite network activated. 240 small devices, positioned in a sphere around the approaching Imperium fleet, powered up at once. Their energy signatures were too weak for the alien ships to consider them a threat. That was their first mistake. Captain Susan Mitchell watched from Delta Station as the network came online. Blue lights on her control panel turned green, one by one. "All satellites reporting ready," she reported to Earth. "Command, awaiting final authorization." In the underground bunker, President Bennett looked at the faces around her. Some showed fear, others determination. All knew this might be humanity's only chance. "Dr. Daniels, are you certain this will work?" she asked one last time. Eve Daniels stood by her equipment, her aged hands steady on the controls. "The pulse disruptor is based on their own technology. We've had 50 years to study it. In theory, it should create a temporary disruption in their shield harmonics." "In theory," General Rivera repeated. He didn't sound convinced. "Sometimes a theory is all we have," Eve replied quietly. President Bennett took a deep breath. "Captain Mitchell, you are authorized to activate Operation Pulse on my mark." She glanced at the countdown clock. 3, 2, 1, mark. In space, Susan pressed her palm against the scanner. The satellite network activated fully, each unit glowing with power. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like Earth was activating a shield. But they weren't creating a barrier. They were creating a weapon. Aboard the Imperium flagship, alarms suddenly blared. Admiral Krell jumped to his feet. "Report," he demanded. His science officer Vex looked confused. "Energy spike from the human defense grid. But it's not a weapon, I've never seen anything like this." "Raise shields to maximum," Krell ordered. "Already at maximum, Admiral," his defense officer replied. "The energy pattern is strange. It seems to be matching our shield frequency." Krell's eyes widened. That should be impossible. Imperium shield technology was thousands of years beyond what these primitives should possess. On his view screen, he watched as the human satellites glowed brighter. Then a pulse of energy erupted from each one simultaneously converging on his fleet. There was no explosion, no visible beam, just a wave of energy that passed through the Imperium ships like they weren't even there. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every shield in the Imperium fleet flickered and died. On Delta Station, Susan Mitchell held her breath. The satellite network had burned itself out with that single pulse. They would get no second chance. "Status report," she demanded. Her tactical officer's voice was filled with wonder. "Confirmed hit. All Imperium vessels showing shield failure. Their defense grid is completely down." In the command center, cheers erupted. Eve Daniels closed her eyes in relief. 50 years of work had paid off in those 3 seconds. But the HFY celebration didn't last long. The Imperium ship's shields began to reactivate almost immediately. "We knew this would happen," Dr. Russell reminded everyone. "The disruption is temporary, but they now know we can take down their shields at will." President Bennett nodded. "Now for Phase 2, Ambassador Lee opened the channel." On screens across Earth and throughout the Imperium fleet, Ambassador Peter Lee appeared. His expression was calm, his voice steady. "Attention, Galactic Imperium. You have witnessed a demonstration of Earth's defensive capabilities. What you experienced was not an attack, merely a warning. We have now proven that we can neutralize your shield technology at will." In the Imperium flagship, Admiral Krell was furious. How is this possible? Scan those satellites. I want to know what technology they used. The satellites are burned. Out, Admiral, Vex reported. Whatever they did, it required their entire network to generate a single pulse. Then they've used their only weapon, Krell said, smiling coldly. Prepare the main cannons. We'll obliterate their pathetic planet. Back on the broadcast, Ambassador Lee continued. You may be considering an immediate attack before you do. There's something else you should know. The view changed to show a massive underground facility. Inside were rows upon rows of devices, identical to the satellites, hundreds of them. What you witnessed was a single prototype network, Lee explained. We have 15 more ready to deploy. Our next demonstration won't just disable your shields, it will target your power systems. After that, your life support. We can deploy these networks faster than you can destroy them. It was a bluff. The underground facility was a movie set, the devices merely props. But Admiral Krell had no way to know that. One moment, please, Ambassador Lee said politely. The transmission paused. In the command center, President Bennett stepped forward. Time for the final touch. Let's make sure they understand exactly who they're dealing with. The transmission resumed, but now President Bennett stood beside Ambassador Lee. I am President Diane Bennett of Earth. For thousands of years, humans have fought each other. We've developed weapons of increasing destructive power. We've survived plagues, disasters, and our own violent nature. But we have never faced extinction, and we will not start today. Her eyes were fierce as she continued. The Imperium threatens Earth with destruction. Humanity issues one final warning. Leave our solar system in peace, or face the consequences of a species that has perfected the art of war against itself, and will not hesitate to use that knowledge against an outside threat. In the Imperium flagship, Krell's officers awaited his command. Their weapons were ready. They could still destroy this insolent planet, but doubt had crept into Krell's mind. In 43 conquests, no species had ever managed to neutralize Imperium shields. None had shown such confidence in the face of overwhelming force. Either these humans possessed technology far beyond their apparent development level, or they were the greatest bluffers in the galaxy. Either way, they were dangerous. Admiral, his weapons officer asked, shall we fire? Krell stared at the blue planet on his screen. His instinct was to obliterate it, to make an example of these defiant humans. But his experience told him something else. When facing an unknown threat, gather more information before committing to battle. Stand down weapons, he ordered finally. Pull the fleet back to the orbit of their fourth planet. His officers looked shocked. Admiral, we're retreating? Not retreating, Krell corrected sharply. Tactical redeployment. I want more information about these humans before we engage them further. On Earth, tension filled the command center as they watched the Imperium fleet. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then slowly, the massive ships began to move away from Earth. They're withdrawing to Mars orbit, Susan reported from Delta Station. Repeat, the Imperium fleet is withdrawing to Mars orbit. The room erupted in cheers and cries of relief. Dr. Eve Daniels sank into a chair, exhausted but smiling. Dr. Russell patted her shoulder, his eyes bright with unshed tears. President Bennett maintained her composure, though her hands trembled slightly. This isn't over, she reminded everyone. They're reassessing, not surrendering. We've bought time, nothing more. General Rivera nodded grimly. But time is what we needed. If they analyze those burned-out satellites, they'll eventually realize our bluff. We need to make our next move count. And we will, the president promised. Humanity just faced its greatest challenge and didn't back down. We stood together. Now, we need to prepare for what comes next. As the Imperium ships took position around Mars, humanity had won its first victory. Not through superior firepower, but through courage, unity, and the element of surprise. The Galactic Imperium had threatened Earth, and humanity's warning had been heard. 3 days passed with the Imperium fleet holding position near Mars. On Earth, celebrations had given way to tense preparation. Everyone knew the aliens were simply pausing to reassess, not giving up. In the command center, the World Defense Council gathered around a large table. The mood was serious but determined. "They're scanning everything," Captain Susan Mitchell reported from Delta Station. "Our satellites, our bases on the moon, even our deep space probes. They're gathering as much information as possible." General Rivera nodded. "As we expected, Admiral Krell isn't a fool. He wants to know if our threat was real before he decides his next move." President Bennett turned to Dr. Eve Daniels. "How are we doing with the real defense system?" Eve smiled, slightly. "Better than expected. With the data we gathered during the pulse, we've improved the design. The new satellites will be more efficient. Each one can generate 3 pulses before burning out." "And how many do we have?" asked Admiral Ling. 37, Eve admitted. "Not the hundreds we claimed, but better than the 0 we had a week ago," Dr. Alan Russell added. "We're also working on adapting the technology to protect our own systems. If the Imperium attacks, we need to be ready." The president nodded thoughtfully. "So we bought time with our bluff, and we're using that time wisely. But eventually Krell will realize we're not as powerful as we claimed." "Actually," Susan said from the video screen, "I'm not so sure. My team has been monitoring their communications. They seem genuinely concerned. They've mentioned other species that looked primitive but had dangerous hidden technology. They're being cautious." "Good," said General Rivera. "Fear and doubt are our allies now." Ambassador Peter Lee, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "We should consider opening formal diplomatic talks. The longer we keep them talking, the more time we have to build our defenses." "And if they demand to inspect our supposed weapons?" asked Admiral Ling. "We refuse on security grounds," Lee replied simply. "Every nation does the same. It's expected. A refusal won't prove we're bluffing." The president considered this. "Open the channel, Ambassador. Let's see if the Imperium is ready to talk instead of threaten." Aboard the Imperium flagship, Admiral Krell studied the data his team had collected. The burned-out satellites were puzzling. Their technology was a strange mix of primitive components and advanced concepts that shouldn't be possible for such a young species. "Admiral," his communications officer called. "The humans are requesting to open diplomatic talks." Krell's 4 eyes narrowed. "Put them through." Ambassador Lee appeared on the screen. "Admiral Krell, I bring greetings from Earth. We propose formal negotiations regarding the future relationship between Earth and the Galactic Imperium." Krell studied the human carefully. "The Imperium does not typically negotiate with species at your development level. You are offered membership through submission, not dialogue." Lee smiled politely. "Yet here we are, having a dialogue. Our demonstration proved that Earth is not a typical case. We believe both sides can benefit from an arrangement that doesn't involve conflict." Before Krell could respond, his science officer Vex entered the command room. "Admiral, I must speak with you immediately. It's about the human technology." Krell held up a hand to pause the transmission. "What is it, Vex?" The science officer looked troubled. "The energy signature from their pulse matches records in our oldest archives. Similar technology was once used by the predecessors." The room fell silent. Every Imperium officer knew of the predecessors, an ancient species that had vanished thousands of years ago, leaving only scattered remnants of their advanced technology across the galaxy. "That's impossible," Krell whispered. "The humans couldn't have. Their device appears to be a crude adaptation of predecessor technology," Vex continued. "The question is, where did they get it? And what else might they have found?" Krell turned back to the waiting human on his screen. Suddenly, these primitives seemed far more dangerous. "The Imperium is willing to open preliminary talks," he said. "Carefully. I will send a delegation to your orbital station within 20 Earth hours." After the transmission ended, Krell turned to his officers. "Prepare a scout ship for me. I want to see these humans personally." On Earth, preparations began for the first diplomatic meeting between humanity and the Galactic Imperium. Delta Station was chosen as neutral ground, in space but still firmly in Earth's territory. Captain Susan Mitchell oversaw the transformation of the station's main observation deck into a meeting room. "I never thought I'd be hosting aliens on my station," she told her team as they worked. "Better than fighting them," one technician replied. In the underground facility, Dr. Daniels and Dr. Russell worked frantically to complete 3 new pulse satellites. They wouldn't be part of the diplomatic talks, but everyone felt safer having them ready just in case. "Do you think this will work?" Alan asked as they calibrated the final device. "Diplomacy, I mean." Eve paused, her old hand steady on the controls. "Diplomacy always works better when backed by strength. We showed them we have teeth. Now we need to show them we have wisdom too." The next day, a small Imperium ship docked with Delta Station. Security teams stood ready, though they kept their weapons holstered as a sign of good faith. Susan welcomed the delegation personally. Admiral Krell was taller than she expected, his gray skin and 4 eyes making him undeniably alien. Yet there was intelligence in those eyes, and caution. "Welcome to Earth Space, Admiral," she said formally. "I'm Captain Susan Mitchell, commander of this station." Krell studied her with all 4 eyes. "Your demonstration was impressive, Captain. Few species have ever surprised the Imperium as Earth has." Susan maintained her composure. "We prefer to make friends rather than enemies, Admiral, but we will defend our home if necessary." "So I've seen," he replied. In the meeting room, Admiral Krell faced President Bennett and the Earth delegation across a round table, a human symbol of equality that wasn't lost on the alien leader. "The Imperium claims this star system as part of its territory," Krell began. "This is not negotiable." President Bennett didn't flinch. "Earth claims this star system as our home. That is also not negotiable." For a tense moment, the 2 leaders stared at each other. Then Ambassador Lee smoothly intervened. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong," he suggested. "Instead of competing claims, maybe we should discuss mutual interests. The galaxy is vast. Surely there's room for cooperation rather than conflict." Krell's upper eyes blinked, a sign of consideration in his species. "The Imperium has never faced a species like yours. You appear primitive, yet you possess technology that should be beyond your reach. You are few in number, yet you stand defiant before a superior force. Humans have always been full of surprises," President Bennett said with a slight smile. "Even to ourselves." "Perhaps," Krell admitted. "My science officer believes you've discovered predecessor technology. Is this true?" A flash of confusion crossed the humans' faces. They exchanged glances, and Dr. Daniels spoke up from her seat at the back of the room. "We don't know who built the ship we found," she said honestly. "It crashed in our desert 50 years ago. Most of it was destroyed, but we studied what remained. If these predecessors created that ship, then yes, our pulse technology is based on their work." Krell's posture changed subtly. "Interesting. Very few species ever find such artifacts, and fewer still can decode them." "Humans are good at solving puzzles," Eve replied simply. As the meeting continued, something unexpected happened. The tension began to ease as both sides talked about technology, space, and their different worlds. For the first time, they were speaking as potential allies rather than enemies. Finally, Admiral Krell made his decision. "The Imperium will establish an outpost on your 4th planet as our forward base in this sector. Earth will maintain its independence, provided you share information about any other predecessor technology you discover." President Bennett considered the offer. It wasn't perfect, but it was far better than the destruction they had faced days earlier. "We accept these terms," she said, "with one addition. The Imperium will recognize Earth's sovereignty over this entire solar system. Your base on Mars will operate only with our permission." Krell's eyes narrowed, but after a moment, he nodded. "Agreed." As the meeting ended, Captain Susan Mitchell escorted the alien delegation back to their ship. Admiral Krell paused before boarding. "Your species is young, Captain, but remarkable. I look forward to seeing what you become." Susan smiled. "So do we, Admiral. So do we." As the Imperium ship undocked, Susan watched it return to the main fleet. The immediate danger had passed. Earth had faced its greatest threat and emerged not just alive but recognized, a new player in a much larger game than humanity had ever imagined. In the command center, President Bennett addressed the world. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for Earth. We have met an alien power as equals, not as subjects. The road ahead will not be easy, but we will walk it together, united as one human family. Dr. Eve Daniels watched the speech from her lab, smiling as she worked on the next generation of pulse technology. The crashed ship that had defined her life's work wasn't just a scientific curiosity anymore. It was humanity's key to the stars. 6 months passed since the historic agreement between Earth and the Galactic Imperium. The Red Plains of Mars now hosted a small Imperium outpost where alien ships came and went. Earth had insisted the base remain small, just enough for diplomatic and scientific purposes, not a military stronghold. Life on Earth had changed forever. Humans looked up at the night sky with new understanding. They were not alone, and the universe was both more wonderful and more dangerous than they had imagined. Captain Susan Mitchell had been promoted to admiral and now commanded Earth's growing space fleet. Today, she was traveling to Mars for her first inspection of the Imperium outpost. Her ship, the Defiance, was Earth's newest vessel, built with a combination of human and adapted alien technology. "Approaching Mars orbit, Admiral," her pilot reported. Susan nodded. "Signal the Imperium base. Let them know we're on schedule." As the Defiance circled the red planet, Susan saw the Imperium facility below. It was elegant in its alien way, curved, structures that shimmered in the Martian sunlight. A familiar voice came through the communications system. "Admiral Mitchell, this is Admiral Krell. Welcome to Mars Outpost 1. We are ready to receive your delegation." Susan smiled slightly. In the months since their first meeting, she and Krell had developed a cautious respect for each other. "Thank you, Admiral. We're beginning our descent now." On Earth, President Diane Bennett met with the World Defense Council. The mood was different from their tense meetings during the crisis, still serious, but with an undercurrent of hope. "The Mars inspection is proceeding as planned," General Rivera reported. "Admiral Mitchell's team will ensure the Imperium is honoring all aspects of our agreement." Dr. Eve Daniels, now heading Earth's new Advanced Technology Division, added her report. "Our progress with the predecessor technology continues to exceed expectations. We've developed improved shield systems for all major cities and our space vessels." "And what about the Imperium? Have they shared information as promised?" the President asked. Ambassador Peter Lee nodded. "Yes, though carefully. They've provided star charts of nearby systems and basic information about other species we might eventually encounter. They're still protective of their advanced technology, but that's to be expected." "And have they explained more about these predecessors?" President Bennett asked, turning to Dr. Alan Russell. Alan shook his head. "Not much. The Imperium themselves have limited knowledge. The predecessors vanished thousands of years ago, leaving only scattered remnants of their technology across the galaxy. Finding even small pieces of their work is considered incredibly valuable, which explains their interest in our crashed ship," Eve added, "and why they're treating us with more respect than they initially planned." The President nodded thoughtfully. "So we lucked into an advantage, a cosmic lottery ticket that saved Earth from conquest." "Luck favors the prepared," Dr. Russell replied. "We spent 50 years studying that technology, working to understand it. Many other species might have simply destroyed the crash site or failed to grasp its significance." On Mars, Susan Mitchell walked beside Admiral Krell through the Imperium outpost. Despite their physical differences, they had learned to read each other's body language. Today, Krell seemed troubled. "Something's bothering you, Admiral," Susan said directly. Humans had quickly learned that the Imperium respected straightforwardness. Krell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of consideration. "You are perceptive, Admiral Mitchell." "Yes, I received concerning news from Imperium Command yesterday. Another empire, the Zorax Dominion, has been expanding aggressively in this sector. They are not like us. The Imperium conquers to bring order and stability. The Zorax destroy simply because they can." Susan frowned. And they're heading toward our solar system? Not immediately. But within a few of your years, yes, they likely will be. Krell turned all four eyes to her. The Imperium fleet that came to your world 6 months ago would not be enough to stop them. Susan understood the implication. Earth had barely managed to stand against the Imperium. Against this new threat, even the Imperium itself was concerned. Why tell me this? She asked. Because despite our rocky beginning, I have come to respect humanity, Krell replied. Your species accomplished in 50 years what takes most 1,000, adapting predecessor technology to your own use. Given time, humans might become valuable allies to the Imperium. If we survive the Zorax, Susan noted. Indeed. When Susan returned to Earth, an emergency meeting of the World Defense Council was called. The room fell silent as she described what Krell had told her. So after escaping, one alien conquest we're facing another? General Rivera asked grimly. Not immediately, Susan replied. We have time to prepare. And something else. Krell has offered Imperium assistance with our defense systems. Dr. Daniels raised her eyebrows. That's unexpected. Why would they help us? Self-interest, Ambassador, Lee suggested. If the Zorax conquer Earth, the Imperium loses their foothold in this sector. Better to have us as a buffer than nothing at all. President Bennett considered this. Or perhaps there's more to it. Admiral Mitchell, what's your impression of Krell's motives? Susan thought carefully before answering. I believe he genuinely respects what humanity accomplished. We surprised them. We stood up to a superior force and earned our place. In their culture, that matters. The president nodded. Then we accept their help, but cautiously, and we accelerate our own development programs. Dr. Russell spoke up. There's something else to consider. The crashed ship we found. What if it's not the only predecessor artifact on Earth? They may have visited our world thousands of years ago. There could be other sites, other technology waiting to be discovered. The idea spread through the room like electricity. If Earth held more ancient alien technology, it might change everything. I want search teams organized immediately, the president ordered. Start with ancient sites that have always puzzled archaeologists, and keep it quiet. We don't need to advertise what we're looking for to the rest of the galaxy. 3 weeks later, in a remote area of the Amazon rainforest, the first discovery was made. A research team uncovered structures deep underground that no human civilization could have built. The materials were unlike anything on Earth, preserved perfectly after thousands of years. And in an underground chamber they found it, a complete predecessor data archive. While most of it was unreadable with current technology, even the small portions they could access contained knowledge far beyond anything the Imperium had shared. When Dr. Daniels reported the find to the president, she couldn't keep the excitement from her voice. This changes everything. With this knowledge, we might be able to defend against the Zorax or any other threat. President Bennett asked the question everyone was thinking. Should we tell the Imperium what we've found? After a long discussion, the decision was made. Earth would share some information, enough to strengthen the alliance, but not everything. Some secrets would remain humanity's alone. 1 year to the day after the Imperium fleet first entered Earth's solar system, representatives from both worlds gathered on Delta Station. What had begun as a near conquest had evolved into an uneasy partnership, now growing stronger in the face of a common enemy. Admiral Susan Mitchell stood at the window, looking out at Earth below. So much had changed, and so much more change was coming. The Imperium had threatened Earth, and humanity had issued its warning. But now the greatest challenges and opportunities lay ahead. We were lucky, Dr. Eve Daniels said, joining her at the window. Susan shook her head. Not just lucky, determined, united, clever. She smiled slightly. Human. Eve nodded, her aged face reflective. For all our history, we looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know the truth. The universe is filled with both wonders and dangers. And humanity will face them all, Susan replied confidently, just as we always have. As they spoke, The next generation of Earth's defense satellites moved into position, their design now incorporating both human ingenuity and alien knowledge. On the planet below, teams of scientists worked to unlock more secrets from the predecessor, archives. And in shipyards around the world, a fleet was growing. A fleet that would one day take humanity beyond their solar system. The Empire had threatened Earth. Humanity had issued one final warning. And now, united as never before, they prepared to take their place among the stars. The end.